Fun day. Friday. I've tagged this as fun stream. I think that what that means is kind of like a wild card. Like there's not really much planned. I think the general gist is for Fridays to get a sense of the space. Like we kind of, and I say we, but I'm really talking about me. Like I kind of operate secluded, from the rest of whatever it is, philosophy YouTube or whatever's in the self-help space, the science space on YouTube, who's actually working to like bring those things together. So I think this is our opportunity to go out and just start looking around, do a lot of React content. That's fun. And just to get a sense of get a sense of what we should be doing with our content, who we might want to collaborate with, the spaces we would want to either reach out to or recognize. Yeah, so I think we're just going to go forward. And I've got some clips from stream, or clips that people on our stream recommended, or at least channels. So the Math Sorcerer, he's got some motivational videos, so I think I'm going to just let these rip. And I got to check out what the rest of this channel is doing.
Every single day. It doesn't matter if you are almost at the point you want to be, or if you are just getting started, or maybe you've already reached your goals. Every single day, you have to get after it, my friends.
Stay
People
hard.
think that life is about results. It's about achieving your dreams and reaching your goals. And that is a big part of it, my friends, but it's more than that. People often say to enjoy the journey, right? It's the journey, not just the destination. And it is. And even those hard times, if you're in a math class, let's say, and you're struggling with mathematics and you just don't get it. Yes, you might look back on this time in your life and think, wow, that was really hard. But you're also going to look back on it from a place of appreciation. You will look back on these moments. You will look back on your life now, 20 years later, and you're going to be like, oh my God, those were the good old days. People romanticize the past. You will romanticize this moment, even if it's hard. I mean, unless there's something really terrible going on in your life and you're in a dark, dark place, then maybe not. But for most people, we tend to romanticize the past, even when it wasn't the best of times. I remember when I was a kid. This is a strange story, but I'll share it. I was walking to school, and it was quite a long walk, and I was by myself, and I think I was in 7th grade or 5th grade, 5th, 6th or 7th grade. And I remember thinking that people always say like, oh, it's great to be a kid. That's what I would hear on the news, and that's what I would hear on like TV shows. And I remember thinking, no, this sucks. I don't want to go to school. I'm going to remember this moment just so that I don't romanticize the past. And I remember specifically telling myself to remember that moment in time. It's kind of a creepy thing. But the point of this video is, it's not just about the destination, it's about the journey, it's about the ups, it's about the downs, the good and the bad. Continue to get after it, enjoy the journey. Life is hard. And that's all I wanted to say for today.
Pretty cool. I do feel like, this type of advice does help people. Like just getting like some motivational thing, whether that's just a speech like this or some mantra, whatnot. That said, I don't think these videos are going to be offering much more than these. I don't know what the word's going to be called. I don't know. I apologize. If this is. Yeah, platitude. That might be it. Like, we hear all this. So really on this channel, we're going to try to figure out what we actually could do to make it so that it's easier to get up after it every day, and, also to point out what happens when you do get after it every day. And yeah. The other thing is, specifically in response to the topic that he just mentioned, there is something really retrospective about like looking back at a point in your life that was actually not fun in that moment and thinking, that was kind of nice. I feel like that's a privileged perspective that you get after the fact. But if you were to ask, like, you have to recognize that you're not the same person in both of these things. If you were to ask the other person if they wanted to get out of that, then they would say yes, absolutely. So you're only afforded that at the suffering of yourself in the past. Like, it's almost, you're almost reveling on the suffering of yourself in the past, which you could even think of as someone else. So I don't know, maybe that's a grim way to look at it, but
become the kind of person that can learn anything. So when you go to school and you study, whether it be mathematics, physics,
I wonder if this is like campus.
Science, engineering, you learn a specific subject. And more important than that, you learn how to learn. I used to have this friend. He was a professor who, we worked together, much older than I am. And he used to always say that the whole point of college is to learn how to learn. It's like the more you study and the more you learn, it doesn't matter what it is, you get better at learning. In mathematics, there's a very specific name for it. It's called mathematical maturity. And that's the ability to learn new math once you know some mathematics. And so the more you learn, the easier it becomes to learn more. And so the next time you're sitting there struggling, trying to learn something that you don't want to learn. For example, I remember trying to learn biology and I didn't want to learn it because I thought, why do I need biology? It's not part of my major. There's value in that. Learn as much as you can. Everything you learn today is not only going to teach you something new, but it's going to make new learning easier. So the next time you're feeling down, and the next time you're in a class, or you feel like you have to learn something that you don't really want to learn, remember, it's worth it. I think that's all I want to say in this video.
All right, not too much there, but you know what? There is something we could take from that. We will talk specifically about the topic of learning how to learn in part 2 of our document. However, there is something to be said about actually doing it. Where do we have this? Where do we have learning? Learning? While we can learn the tips and tricks that allow us to learn more effectively, we need to highlight how it takes actually learning to actually build this understanding of how to better learn for each person. Not the best way to say that, but we just need to get it in here. Okay, so I wanted to see, what does the self-help space look like these days? We could go like top of the year. What are people talking about? Stoic ideas. So maybe this is just not the right subreddit. What are the subreddits? Would it be r/psychology? What is r/psychology working on these days? I think this might just be a bunch of articles. Atheists are nicer to Christians than Christians are to atheists. Study finds. Nice. And I don't know if we should just be looking at headlines here. But yeah, like where's the space where we can I mean, maybe less wrong is something we should go back to and just see what's going on there. But like, what's the space that has the like a real nice ecosystem of content? The ancient Greeks invented democracy and warned us how it could go horribly wrong. Yikes. Meritocracy is improved by affirmative action, which reveals hidden talent. Our biases for superficial traits unrelated to performance lead to bad selection of candidates. If we want the best, we never need a version. Okay. This is pro-affirmative action. Short history of the separation of powers. A lot of these are very political now. Work is broken. The last days of social media. How do I say this? Schopenhauer's advice is to play dumb in society because intellectual superiority breeds feelings of envy in others, since we value intelligence as the trait that separates us from animals. Yeah, hopefully we don't celebrate that. Languages are social tools, not windows into reality. Languages are not natural entities, but acts of social doing, fluid practices that become rigid only when mobilized to forge identity, power, and belonging. Right, there's a huge interpretive lens, though, to use like these key players. I mean, you could just say to forge communication, to forge positive emotion. You know, you could go in many different directions in your interpretation of how these social doings come together. Wittgenstein, Heidegger, in the language of silence. Silence is not the absence of meaning, but a mode of meaning that reveals what language cannot express. I would say it's part of language. So true understanding requires us to step outside of words and allow its silence itself to speak. I don't know why this is a prescription here. So true understanding requires us to... What's happening? What is this? Is this an article? Who's making this type of non sequitur in a headline here? All right, when we seek a definite identity, we betray our true nature as fundamentally fluid and indeterminate. Yeah, I mean, there's always an issue with this. Like, obviously, the document kind of tells something like this, but it's just we don't want to be as adamant about our wording here, where we betray our true nature as fundamentally fluid. Like, we could say that, in we interpret our understanding as inherently dynamic, and we could say that's the true nature of our understanding, but to say something like this without having that level of nuance makes it seem like we're pointing out that our true nature is an ought, and people ought to be, doing this because, fundamentally our understanding changes. So I would say that's a little careless. But perhaps this is still good advice, though. Instead, our identity is as dynamic and alive as a butterfly in flight. Conspiracy theories are dangerous, even if very few people believe them. Social media is not a democracy. The Babadook. Surprisingly insightful take on the psychology of grief. What was this, last month? We went last year. Yeah, we already looked at this on stream once. Shifting the null hypothesis in consciousness science. The question is, what do we mean by conscious and what we mean by animal here? Occasionally, we might get stuck by a disturbing feeling that life is absurd and nothing we do matters. Albert Camus thinks rather than deny life's absurdity with comforting delusions, we can establish a more authentic happiness by perpetually scorning our absurd fate. Curiosity is not a passive reaction to novelty. It is a means of increasing control over your life by converting uncomfortable situations into familiar ones. This is something that we really could harp on. If you lack control over societal and systematic forces, the emphasis on self-responsibility only heightens feelings of failure and anxiety while doing little to drive any real change. Interesting. I might save that. Calling himself a disciple of Freud, Wittgenstein nonetheless rejected his concept of the unconscious. He argued the unconscious wasn't a discovery but a linguistic construct, and he warned against mistaking it for a hidden entity that could be scientifically proven. Well, let's just skip over that for now. This video aims to answer a crucial question. Why do we constantly entertain ourselves and divert our attention? I explore Blaise Pascal's philosophy, connecting it with Heidegger's concept being toward death and Ernest Becker's book, The Denial of Death. All right, we should check that out. As our resident Heidegger expert, Nietzsche's concept of eternal justification through aesthetics urges us to make life artistically beautiful, to discuss, urges, like there's an ambiguity about the prescription here. Is it just that, let's chill on that. Was this not top of the past year? What happened? When we did top of the past month, weren't we reading like 100? Yeah, these are all pretty high up. Why is the year dropping lower so quickly? What is happening here? The top of the past month is a higher score than the top of the past year, or is this not the year? Is this actually like the week? Nope. Very interesting. Might be broken. I might just save this one. This is kind of charged. Do be curious. The blinders of curiosity and the predictability of novelty. How we misconstrue curiosity in cognitive science research. Interesting. Curiosity seems to be a ubiquitous human drive. No member of our species is so cognitively bereft as to completely lack this characteristic trait. The desire to explore the world and plumb its unknown depths is arguably the foundation for human creative ingenuity. So it is tempting to assume that the human mind has a built-in urge to explore, an innate need to learn about the world for learning's sake. What drives this impulse and how it manifests day to day is not entirely clear. By far the most popular current theory across both cognitive science and AI research is rooted in rational choice theory. It is also the most intuitively appealing and goes as follows. Understanding the objective world is useful for making accurate predictions. Predictability is sought out because it helps you plan future actions. Where your predictions fail, when unforeseen experiences defy your expectations, curiosity takes over in order to fill in the gaps in your knowledge. The result is an ever-growing knowledge base of empirical beliefs that serves increasingly complicated goals. Was this the same post? No, this is a different post. Wow. Okay, so I was going to say that both of these are about curiosity, in different perspectives. The result is an ever-growing knowledge base of empirical beliefs that serves increasingly complicated goals. So our document takes a different approach from this while still leveraging predictive processing as our driver. The above model of curiosity is so widespread that providing supporting quotes is almost superfluous. It is the de facto standard theory in research and has been since the time of Piaget. It forms the basis for the free energy principle, predictive coding, and model-based reinforcement learning. Model-based reinforcement learning. We might need to look into that. Presents a mirror image of scientific discovery. Here it is being injected into our core mental functions as a fundamental intrinsic drive, improving the model components of a model-based agent so that they can form better with reality is almost always a good idea, regardless of the external performance standard. So this is for AI. I would say that we're going to need to draw a distinction between, or a line in between AI and how we talk about ourselves. Even though people don't. Through exploration, the explorer acquires not just information about a specific task or environment in isolation, but information in relation to previous experiences, informing the development of more generally useful behaviors. General intelligence requires rethinking exploration. Yeah, there's nothing that like intrinsically. I mean, so the question is that maybe this thing's going to assault, so maybe we could like prepare here. This thing is in this article. So curiosity is a built-in human drive that is at base, simply, we could think about it as just procedural. It's something that's hardwired into our DNA, and it manifests in our behavior and also our visceral emotional experience, as well as our conscious experience. And we can consider how it could be useful, not only because of our intuitive thinking of curiosity, as he just mentioned, but we could also point out that, we could think about this in terms of the whole evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology type argument, where it's something like we built these adaptations or exaptations or spandrels. We are driven via curiosity because it helps us survive. And so the question is that necessarily good now? And you could make effective arguments for that case and against that case. It's almost speculative because we kind of only retrospectively consider whether it was good if we were driven in this moment. It's more precise to just point out that is just the inherent behavior that we have here. Now, the reason why I mentioned that this connects with Heidegger is because Heidegger literally had curiosity as like an intuitive characteristic of human beings. Of course, he talks about it through the lens of Dasein and how we experience being. So he's pointing this out at a phenomenological level, like at a level of conscious experience, how we are driven towards the next thing. We're just generally curious, and yeah. And not only that, he points to that we're curious about what things are, like determinately so, which is what leads to the connection between curiosity and like inauthentic being. But also, he points out obviously the authentic side of that. All right, we're getting away from I think that's all we could talk about really to prepare ourselves here. I think I'm going to wait and see when a prescription comes into play or when a value statement comes into play. I'm going to try to be careful about that. The novelty of an image reflects how much it differs from what we expect to see based on what we have seen in the past. This is not quite true. I mean, like theoretically, yes, but it's more apt to say it's simply based upon our current predisposition, which would be something like how the brain is currently wired right now. And obviously, because we don't know exactly how knowledge stacks up in like the specific brain connections that you have, we can only speculate as to what it means for something to be salient for us in the moment, so something to be novel for us. And we can just, we could base it on what we've seen in the past in general. But it's also based on what mood we're in. It's based on, the diet we've had or whether or not you're taking Adderall. It's based on a lot. so all of these statements have been like pretty reductive in terms of the full matter that we're talking about here. Curiosity is the desire to create or discover more non-random, non-arbitrary, regular data that is novel and surprising in the sense that it allows for compression progress because its regularity was not yet known. Yeah, so I think what's being pointed out here is a failure in cognitive science to take a certain reductive interpretive stance on predictive processing and to put it in this mode of we're building knowledge, and knowledge is like this, there's like a true objective world and we're stacking up information. And of course, we assault that idea in our document while still holding the beauty of predictive processing. Indeed, you'd be hard-pressed to find any research that holds an alternative view. Experiments that investigate our tendency to engage with novelty always assume, of course, that the authors know what counts as novelty. For example, a novel toy, a novel piece of art. Right. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. It's very difficult to figure out what is actually the novelty here, especially since novelty isn't just a description of what you're seeing. It's a description. It's more aptly a description of the internal brain processes that are affecting some type of experience or affecting some type of change in the brain, or just affecting other neurodynamics. So, yeah, it's hard to actually pinpoint the novelty of the external stimuli rather than the internal processes. In practical implementations, such as in novelty-driven reinforcement learning, there is always an algorithm that calculates the novelty factor of actions or experiential states and uses it to determine what the agent should explore next. Now, you could try to abstract away all the internal stuff, say that you're in this mood and you're an agent that can operate in this way, and so then now we can think purely about external states and the type of salience that they would manifest or amount to, or affect, I really should say. Curiosity has structure. The standard approach through those superficially appealing is also highly improbable and runs into major obstacles as a result. Firstly, by its own assumptions, pure novelty, in other words, complete unpredictability, should be the most compelling and interesting of all stimuli, and yet experience shows this not to be the case. Right. Okay. Complete unpredictability. Yeah, so, okay, I'm not going to read ahead, but the other thing is too much novelty in the experience, if we're talking about salience of experiences, there's salience breaks down into two things, like the amount of it and whether it's positive or negative. And, you could say once it becomes unpredictable enough, it can get into this negative emotional reaction where now you're not dealing with curiosity entirely. You're dealing with something like anxiety, and certainly curiosity is still driving the resolution of this negative anxiety-inducing prediction error, and you need that curiosity in order to build order around that chaos, right? But yeah, this is pointing out that the previous simplistic model doesn't really account for this. I think that was my speculation. I haven't read ahead yet. Firstly, by its own assumptions, pure novelty should be the most compelling and interesting of all stimuli, and yet experience shows this not to be the case. A textbook on advanced calculus, despite being unknown and novel to most people, is decidedly uninteresting to the... So, yeah, okay, never mind. Maybe not just the negative anxiety inducing prediction error, but also the straight up not rewarding enough salience. So... like positive or negative I think this would be the case where it's like a positive but very small, minute salience, is decidedly uninteresting to those who don't understand basic math, and even to those who do. It is too obscure and certain, and contains little to draw one's attention. Yet if considered on the basis of sheer novelty, toddlers should be more curious about calculus books than books on construction vehicles, since they already know more about the latter. All right, so now this is being a little... I mean, I guess this is acting as if the cognitive science is so reductive as to be in a position to actually say that the kids should be more interested about that without taking into account the kids' internals, as we mentioned previously. The world is so diverse and unpredictable that pure novelty by itself is insufficient to draw your attention. Algorithms that calculate novelty from information density assume that your interests in an event is proportional to the degree of deviation from expectation. Yet often tiny changes, like a slightly different note in a song, stand out like a sore thumb. Well, it's going to depend how you model expectation, though. Because if you had a more sophisticated model of expectation, then you could account for why a slightly different note in a song could amount to that much significance for someone. At other times, you can easily tune out a cacophony of traffic outside your window. At the extreme end, pure randomness, like noise on a CRTV, is as novel as it gets. It depends what you mean by novel. And yet it fails to captivate anyone. So that, I guess this is being a little facetious about novelty. Definition of novelty here. The crux of the issue is that any true novelty and sensory experience would be inherently unrecognizable. It is equivalent to random noise that you cannot So this is like taking predictive processing and just going with the idea of prediction and prediction error and expectation and just running with it. Granted, I don't know enough about who this author is assaulting to know whether or not this is a appropriate way of going about this type of counter or this counter or this argument. However, it's like this is a weird position because we could just create the steel man. Like this is almost as if we're watching someone attack a straw man of the understanding that we have, and we're even though it might be justified, it doesn't really help us because it's not attacking our steel man. We want something to attack our steel man so that we can learn a little more. Once again, or not once again, but the irony is that this whole conversation is going to not amount to much novelty to us, much interest, if it doesn't actually assault something that we actually believe to be true or something like that. Like the possibility for learning is going to lessen if it's not as salient for us. All right, the crux of the issue is that any true novelty, blah, 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 it's equivalent to random noise that you cannot decipher and exists far outside your ability to ask questions about that it is impossible to notice, like signage in a foreign country written in a language you don't speak. Curiosity can only direct itself towards known things, right? For what is this actually referring? Oh man, what was that? Is this like Genius where if I click that, it's going to open something to the side? No, it's just opening this. For you to learn anything at all from an experience, you must be able to fit what curiosity delivers into a framework you already understand. So not once again, but this is now getting into the territory, the speculative territory of considering what our understanding is. So by talking about our understanding as a framework that you can integrate things into, we're getting close to like schema theory and assimilation and I forgot the other one. Accommodation. It is not a haphazard reaction to novelty. It is a determinate act of asking a question and absorbing an answer. There's something directed, targeted, and specific about situations that trigger curiosity that distinguishes them from everyday random noise. An underlying tension is at work, searching for an answer. You want to find out something about the world. Consider what happens when you watch a mystery movie. The suspense created by the setup is not simply a desire to know what comes next. That would be true for any movie you haven't seen. It is the desire to know the answer to a specific question. Right? It's compelling. So I wonder if we can like skip ahead to something that might be a little bit more useful for us. It's uncomfortable novelty, right? So it's pointing out the difference of salience of novelty. Murder mystery, the resolution can't just be whatever comes next in sequence, blah, blah, blah. It's got to have okay. Every act of curiosity has this structure in the mind rather than being shaped by the world and its explorations. Must determine beforehand what qualifies as a resolution. Even when curiosity seems purely reactive to unexpected events, for example, what was that sound? The answer must be something that, in your opinion, explains it, a toaster or a car alarm, etc., and not a flower or a cloud. There are many types of curiosity. Curiosity is not monolithic or homogeneous, so this is pointing out the different levels of salience and the different modes. What is... I guess I could just look this up. It's literally in our document, but I don't remember. How do you spell salience? Emotion salience? Do I say it? Do I say something actually? Talk about the salient systems. I could have sworn I'd talk about salience. Maybe this was an older version of the document. Yeah, maybe. Salience breaks down into I couldn't tell you. I think it'll come back to me probably like in the middle of the night or something. Okay, so we know all this stuff. In adults, curiosity most often reaches for explicit communicable facts, belying its roots in interpersonal motives. At a time when you would hope to present an image, actually, we could gank that actually. This is more like what, in part 2, this would be something like what draws. This is part of learning. And it would be something like what types of curiosity lead to learning for adults, and then we can just quote this. At a time when you would hope to present an image of yourself as knowledgeable, not knowing some piece of trivia may cause you to look ignorant, leading to anxieties about your social image. Such exploratory actions look like curiosity to someone who is unaware of your deeper motivations. In other more practical situations, such as in engineering, not understanding how to resolve a potential technical challenge. Okay, so this is still talking about that. Although boring may appear to also drive curiosity, closer inspection reveals they are unrelated. For a start, boredom as a concept is difficult to define. The same experience and behavior, in other words, a lack of variation in your environment combined with inaction, may often be termed comfort, ease, or placidity. Imagine lounging on a beach. Boredom rather arises when a constraint is placed upon your actions when you would rather be doing something else. And you could also explain this when your like dopamine tolerance is so high that what you're forced to be doing right now or what you're trying to do right now is not stimulating enough. Like you're not getting enough positive salience out of it. And otherwise it would be curious, right? So it's it's not always having to do with what you're doing, the external stimuli. It could have to do with your internal state. Oh, look at this. Consider how when bored you may browse what's available on TV with nothing much capturing your interest, though you may not be aware of it. Your heart yearns to be doing something else. Right, okay. Impartial curiosity is a fantasy. Standard theories of curiosity promote a model of impartial curiosity as curiosity driven purely by sensory novelty. This is a fantasy, and it reflects an idealized, virtue-laden image of humans as objective, scientifically curious explorers, unbiased by selfish motives. And not just that, but all the other things that come into play when we're talking about the brain. Nevertheless, is it necessarily ego sacrifice if we are to uncover the true roots of curiosity and resolve its inherent paradoxes? For example, one benefit of framing curiosity as a type of control is that we can more naturally balance its pursuit with the need to be cautious in dangerous situations. All right, true novelty entails a change of values. So where does this leave true novelty? According to the analysis above, the result of your exploration of the world must necessarily fit your worldview. Right, but it's making the case inherently so, not like this isn't like a prescription along how you ought to be curious. Your interest in movies is not just an urge for something novel, but a search for what you want, an affirmation of your existing perspective. There can be no true exploration then, nor should there be, since the world is dangerous. This discussion also deserves to talk about openness as a personality trait. Some people are more open to perspectives that don't affirm their understanding, even though they are in line enough to not be either boring or negative emotion inducing. The result is a rather blinkered and constrained view of the world and doesn't seem to leave any open space for real personal growth. Following your curiosity is more likely to entrench your existing predispositions by reconfirming what you already knew or wanted to see. This all seems wrong, and it is wrong because there is more to the picture. True novelty, when it arrives, always comes unannounced and unlooked for. It imposes itself on you without your consent or inquiry. Curiosity plays no part in it. Defies your wishes, destroys old paradigms, and reconstitutes your mind. Okay, so we're getting close to the being towards death. I don't know if there's going to be much. I don't know if we're getting anything beneficial out of this discussion. So let's just get to the potentially more interesting one.
In the previous video, we discussed the dangers of entertainment and how it has completely taken over our lives. The video aimed to remind us that constantly entertaining ourselves wastes our precious time and prevents us from living life to the fullest. However, we didn't answer a crucial question, which is why do we even entertain ourselves? Why is it that human beings since the first civilization have the need and the urge to divert their attention? Is it a way to escape from existential questions? Does our subconscious need to be occupied? What is it exactly? To answer these questions, we will examine...
I can answer the question, I guess, as best I can, speculatively, I guess. We're predisposed with this. No, I shouldn't use the word predisposed because I use it differently. We've got this disposition, this human disposition. It affects how our brain operates, and we are drawn towards salient novelty. And when we get that, it feels pretty good. It's very entertaining. It's very interesting. We know that when we were evolving, humans did not have phones and computers, etc. They didn't even have books, right? So we can consider how the type of entertainment media that we've created over time is overstimulating, and we know that actually affects our brain in the short term and in the long term. But probably in the context of this video, we can just say, or in the context of this question, the short term really just matters here. We could think about this as dopamine tolerance, and you could sit quietly in a room if you were to take a long break from high stimulating activities and pair that along with other things that lower your dopamine, like meditation, sleep and stuff like that. You know, it's not just dopamine tolerance in the sense of like if you watch more TikTok videos, you're going to increase your tolerance, which that is true, but also other things do affect your tolerance, like sleep, like diet. Like you can just do things that will make it so that not regardless, but that, you know, where you're at is already in like a slightly higher tolerance position, let's just say. Not the best way of saying that, but yeah, that's how I would answer this question. I would not answer this question of why we can't sit quietly in a room philosophically, but let's see how this... We can obviously make parallels, but we wouldn't want to answer this type of question primarily philosophically, because philosophers, although they they are quite wise, right? They're building conceptualizations on their intuitions about what they think the science is, right? And I'm not saying that they knew about science in the same way that we know about science. It's not like they knew some facts that we know now, and they're piecing things together. It's like some of these philosophers like did not have the rigor of our scientific infrastructure, our scientific, what do I want to say? Not communities. It doesn't matter. And they literally intuited these logically consistent conceptualizations about how we experience the world. This is like Heidegger's being towards death, which he'll cover here. But yeah, they're making sense of something that we can explain much more aptly with the actual science.
Examined the philosophy of Blaise Pascal, who had written about this topic and perfectly explained it. Blaise Pascal, born in 1623 in Clermont-Ferrand, was a French mathematician, physicist, and philosopher. Initially, Pascal was writing a book called Defense of the Christian Religion, or Apologie de la Religion Chrétienne in French, but he died before finishing it. All the notes of this book were gathered after his death and published posthumously as the Pensées, or Thoughts of Pascal. This book is Pascal's most influential theological work and is widely considered a masterpiece and a landmark in French philosophy. I recommend reading it because despite containing random fragments of text, Pascal's writing style and construction of ideas are truly remarkable. Some passages alone make it a must-read. In this book, Pascal says, "I've discovered that all the misfortunes of men arise from one thing only, that they're unable to stay quietly in their own chamber. This will be our starting point to truly understand the concept of diversion." First, let's try to understand what he meant by staying quietly in a chamber. Is it a state of physical stillness or an absence of thought? As dual beings, we have both a body and a mind. Let's say a physical entity and a spiritual entity. They're both parts of a whole, and this whole is in constant movement. The world in which we live in is characterized by perpetual motion and transformation. It is never still. Therefore, as a part of this world, there is no reason we should be an exception to this law. If you try to sit quietly in a room, you realize that even though you can force your body to be still, your mind will always wander. It's very difficult to keep your mind focused on one thing, or even not focus on anything at all, to keep your mind completely empty. And for those who meditate, you definitely know what I'm talking about, because when you sit down and you start your meditation session, you will realize that in the first 1 or 2 minutes, it's very difficult to just keep your thoughts aligned with your body and just empty your mind. It's very difficult because as soon as you do it, as soon as you empty your mind, next thing you know, you're already thinking about something else. And every time your mind does that, you have to bring it back to just thinking about your breath or something. So you need to always keep directing it and managing it in order for it not to divert. So
we follow the same intuitive exercise in the document pretty early on when we do our, what I keep calling our phenomenology 101.
Our mind always have this tendency to think about something, to occupy itself, to divert itself. And this is exactly what Pascal was talking about. And there's also another situation when this happens. Is, for example, if we're doing a repetitive task that doesn't require our mental faculties, your mind will always wander. If when I'm washing the dishes, I'm never thinking about the dishes. I'm always thinking about something else because it's an automatic movement. I don't need my mind when I'm doing that. Whereas when I'm doing a sales call, when I'm writing a YouTube a video script, for example, then I'm completely consumed. My mind and my body are aligned. They're doing the same thing because what I'm doing, the task at hand, requires my mental faculties. So this is what he meant when he said not being able to stay quietly in a room, because as soon as you sit down, your mind will always want to occupy itself. This difficulty in controlling our thoughts and the constant need to reflect on something is what Pascal referred to as not knowing how to sit quietly in a room. We struggle to remain at rest because as soon as our body isn't busy, our mind demands activity. This is why philosophies like Stoicism and Buddhism are relevant for many people. They address this restlessness and our inability to remain still. Our human condition is marked by anxiety and a lack of serenity. But why is that? But upon stricter examination, when having found the cause of all our ills, I have sought to discover the reason of it. I have found one which is paramount, the natural evil of our weak and mortal condition. situation, so miserable that nothing can console us when we think of it attentively. What separates us from other living beings is our consciousness and our ability to ask metaphysical questions about life and death. Death in particular is something our minds struggle to tolerate.
All right, so this is going in a direction that I don't think is going to be great, because I'd imagine that the issue that we have with sitting quietly in a room is probably something that like other animals, other mammals would have as well. If we figured out what the TikTok equivalent would be for a dog, for example, we could. I would hypothesize, and I would speculate with high conviction that you could get the dog's dopamine tolerance up, and then get them in a situation where they are unable to sit quietly in a room, like they're trying to go on to the next thing. So it would be, I think it would be inappropriate or just not compelling, at least to me, to make it some type of conscious understanding of our death. And I'm a little concerned about where he goes with Heidegger, because I don't think that's going to be an accurate portrayal of being towards death if this is the direction he's going, because that's not what Heidegger was talking about. So
tolerate or comprehend. The idea of death is absurd to us. The notion that everything will eventually cease to exist, that the world as we know it will end, and that we will perish with it. This is a challenging concept to grasp and the reason of all our ills. This is what the German philosopher Martin Heidegger calls existence. Precisely, he uses the term Dasein to describe human existence. To exist is to be aware of one's mortality. Dasein is unique because it's aware of its own existence and can reflect on it. This self-awareness includes an understanding of its own mortality. According to Heidegger, it is the encounter with death that most profoundly highlights the question of being. He says, only humanity has the distinction of standing and facing death, because the human being is earnest about being. Death is the supreme testimony to being. Heidegger's concept of being toward death describes the attitude we should adopt toward our mortality. This involves.
Where did he get this? I don't think this is right. Being toward death describes something that's innate, that it's not something that we have to think about. It's like, it's a fundamental orientation of our conscious experience. And when it's talking about death, like being towards death, it's not referring to our mortal or like our mortality in the sense of like our like biological death. It's referring to something more akin to the past discussion we just had about curiosity, that at every single moment, the world as we currently take it to be is going to change. It's going to die in that sense. So we're always towards this this change, this reality of change, towards potential. And so death isn't always, even though he describes the mode of the base, I forget what it is, state of mind as anxiety, like it's capital A anxiety. So it's not like the actual experience of what we believe intuitively as anxiety. I would imagine that capital A anxiety actually just matches with the affective salience of prediction error. So it actually ranges all the way from positive emotion curiosity to negative emotion anxiety, and also includes being bored and not having being bored is negative emotion. Just it's not necessarily it's not the same type of negative emotion. So there's a whole like range of different emotions at different with different salience. And being towards death is kind of this. He's making sense of our orientation towards all these, and in doing so is making sense of the experiences themselves. So this video, I think, is not actually covering this topic appropriately. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's the actual version of being towards death, and not a discussion about, your mortal death. Obviously, when you think about your mortal death, you can experience heightened states of affective experience. That said, this topic and the key take or the key hint that shows that it's not something that we're thinking about determinately, like death specifically, like our biological death, is the capital B here. Like anytime we're talking about capital B being, it's talking about something that could be occurring when we're conscious of it or not, when we're thinking about almost anything. You know, if we were yeah, I think if we were, it would be a different phrase in Heidegger. I'd have to think about what that phrase would be in Heidegger land, or at least in Being in Time land, if we were to actually talk about, you know, our biological death. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop watching this because it's already made the crucial error. I mean, so to be fair, the error that I made, that I introduced or talked about at the very beginning of us watching this, of to answer these questions in the philosophical mode, I thought that was an error. I think it's an error to talk about this as if our knowledge of our own death is actually causing this issue. I think that's an error. That might even be the biggest error. And then this is more of a technical, like, just because I'm in the know error, which isn't that important. So we're going to have to stop this one and see what people say. People are inherently life People are taking this at... This is r/philosophy. I'm surprised no one's actually taken him to task for that. I'm surprised no one's taken him to task for either of the things I mentioned. We won. It's really that simple. We distract ourselves with trivial entertainment because we have no natural... This is also just terribly incorrect. Or I shouldn't say incorrect, but terribly less apt. I would, you know, I think we could actually say just straight up incorrect. This guy's bringing up death is sort of used as a metaphor. Wow, I'm quite surprised. Unless they got downvoted. Yeah, I feel like this guy's onto something maybe. Oh my gosh. This guy just doesn't want to be lumped in. Well, you are human, sir. I'm sorry.
Some of the darkest.
All right, the most unsettling argument for atheism. I guess that's what we're doing next. I think I'm going to use the restroom before we begin, because I got to be sharp. All right, BRB. Yo, Onion Helmet. What is good? I've just been doing React content pretty much, just trying to run through a bunch of videos. Trying to get a sense of the philosophy space. So far, I guess I haven't been too impressed. But yeah, I think we watched 3 things now, and I think each one had something up. So, Marx is. Oh, you did link that. You know what? I did I looked through it in the watch later. So you know what? Now that you said it, we gotta add it to the list.
Navan is the #1 rated business.
All right. We could put that next. First, we gotta listen to this. The most unsettling argument for atheism. So we actually haven't been on one topic this whole entire time. I guess the last topic we were on was something more like curiosity and dopamine tolerance. It's from Jonas. Who's Jonas? Oh, CCK philosophy. Are we not like following this person? We are subscribed, yeah. Okay. Explaining this meme with existential philosophy. That's funny. The guy who critiqued Sam Harris's The Moral Landscape. Nice. Very cool. All right, let's rip.
Some of the darkest philosophers in history provide some of the most profound insights into existence. Learn how to more boldly face up to reality and forge powerful new ways of thinking from some of history's greatest minds in my book, The Art of Living a Meaningless Existence. The link is in the description. Is it possible to truly be a pessimist, in the absolute philosophical sense? Is it possible to truly think that existence is principally negative, and that non-being is better than being, and still choose to continue to exist? Is it possible to see no purpose or hope in anything, and still pursue philosophy and art in order to express this view? The German philosopher and poet Philip Meinlander is perhaps one of the rare cases where one's intellectual pessimism was ultimately reflected in their literal actions in life. He is perhaps one of the closest anyone has ever gotten to true philosophical pessimism, if such a thing is even possible, not purely because of what he wrote and thought, but because of what he did. Having taken philosophical pessimism to its ultimate conclusion, taking his own life with it. In the words of the later German philosopher Theodor Lessing, Meinlander's work is perhaps the most radical system of pessimism known to philosophical literature. Though the actual complete motivation for Meinlander's final choice in life can only be speculated, its conjunction with his work is disquieting at best, intimating the potential powers and dangers of one's thoughts and beliefs. A bright mind can shine so brightly, it can burn itself up if one is not careful. Although Meinlander's work is extremely obscure, paradoxical, and unrelentingly dark, it is also vivid, comprehensive, hopeful, empathetic, and tender. Meinlander was born in Germany in 1841 with the birth name Philip Batz. He was born into a wealthy family.
Are we just covering this guy in this video? Because if so, I think that might be. We explore the extremely uncanny life and work of the philosopher Meinlander. He is perhaps the most pessimistic philosopher to ever live, not merely because of what he wrote, but because of what he did. I think we're gonna skip this one. You know, today's supposed to be Fun Friday, and this is bumming the vibe. So let's move on to Shrek.
When I received a telephone call last month.
This is not it. Did we just get absolutely? There we go. Am I gonna get in trouble for having that type of music in the background here? Is that allowed? I don't know how Twitch works. All pessimists except Spengler are useless to me. Nice.
Ogre in the Shrek universe is considered by everyone to be a violent and terrifying monster. As we can see through observing Shrek, the protagonist, these beliefs are completely false. In fact, Shrek is a pacifist. He prefers to avoid conflict.
I don't know if I'm allowed to have the music or not, but I might just read it just in case. I don't think I can afford automatic strikes early on in this life, the life of the channel. In fact, Shrek is a pacifist. He prefers to avoid conflict and for the most part chooses non-violent methods of protecting himself. With this, we can guess that ogres represent a disenfranchised and stereotyped group within the context. Oh no. Context of this film. Shrek is also a personification of every negative stereotype associated with the proletariat. He is an unhygienic, ill-mannered, and lives something. These are common and terrible stereotypes of poor working-class people. Shrek has all of these traits exaggerated to the extreme. Thus, we can assume that Shrek is the personification of the proletariat. That's how we can assume it. In addition to this, he's an ogre, so he is on the very bottom of the role in society. Shrek and the other characters in the society live under a fascist regime. This is evident in several ways. The fairy tale creatures have seemingly no rights. They are rounded up and sent to unintelligible on Shrek's swamp without notice. The fact that they were sent to stay here shows that Shrek also appeared to have little rights over his own dwelling. We also see Lord Farquaad torturing the gingerbread man and even breaking off his legs in order to get information on where the other fairy tale creatures were. Yeah, this is kind of crazy.
Information on where...
Farquaad says that fairy tale creatures are trash and poisoning his perfect world. This sounds a lot like Nazi ideology, in which the main threat to a healthy society is seen as a foreign parasite attacking the system, rather than problems inherent to the system itself. It is evident that there is no class consciousness or solidarity amongst the working class in the Shrek universe. So this is putting like the Marxist lens over this, but it could just be any abstractly, authoritarian versus people situation. Shrek, who is proletariat personified, the loner, and this is one of his major personality traits. Every business owner with people out. Okay. In the beginning of the film, we see the poor working class people pitting themselves against the fairy tale creatures, rounding them up and turning them in for a measly price. Wow. Donkey represents the revolutionary as he makes several attempts throughout the film to collaborate with Shrek and fight back against the ruling class. He's the true hero. He's also one of the only characters in the film to not initially judge Shrek for being an ogre. Because of this, it is clear that Donkey wants to destroy that. He sees the importance of working class solidarity and refraining from clashing with one another over petty differences.
He does not
fall for the bourgeois propaganda. Sadly, Shrek continuously shuts down Donkey's attempts towards collaboration and working class organization throughout the film. Because Donkey is revolutionary, he believes that violent force is necessary to bring down the bourgeoisie. In fact, that after Shrek is forced by Lord Farquaad to rescue Princess Fiona in order to get the swamp back, Donkey makes an attempt to instill class consciousness in Shrek and even suggests what sounds like revolution. He poses the question, why should you help Lord Farquaad just so you can get your swamp back? Which is something that he shouldn't have taken. Oh my gosh. Have taken in the first place. He tells Shrek that he should instead throttle Lord Farquaad, lay siege to his fortress, and grind his bones to make his bread. Yikes. Shrek quickly shuts this down. This makes it apparent that Shrek is a proponent of nonviolence and pacifism. Yo, Darmadam, we're looking at the Marxist analysis of Shrek. He says that he is tired of people assuming that ogres are violent, and he would like for people to know that he is not scary and it is just a stereotype. Because he feels marginalized and does not want to adhere to these stereotypes. He remains complacent in his oppression. This is just what happens in our society, where attempts by oppressed groups to revolt are characterized as confirmations of the very same negative stereotypes that are often used to justify their oppression. Perhaps it is this misguided philosophy of nonviolence and complacency that makes Shrek susceptible to falling for the liberal reforms presented to him by the bourgeoisie in this film. This liberal reform is Princess Fiona. It is not uncommon for the bourgeoisie or for fascists to offer the working class some sort of compromise. To keep them appeased and under the illusion that things are better for them than they actually are. In actuality, these reforms change nothing. The status quo is maintained and the lower classes continue to be exploited. What we can tell by the character of Princess Fiona is that she is the epitome of upper class society. She's beautiful, well-spoken, and proper, the exact opposite of how Shrek is portrayed. Princess Fiona's personality rapidly changes throughout the film. She was always wearing a facade, one to suit her needs at any given moment. So when she overhears the revolutionary donkey talking to Shrek in a symbolic effort to collaborate, she feels the need to act. The fact that her personality changes dramatically at this point is no coincidence. Princess Fiona suddenly becomes more ogre-like. She burps, makes cotton candy out of spider webs, and enjoys eating rats. It's at this point that Shrek begins to relate to this bourgeois woman. He falls for the appearances being presented to him. This is a representation of what is seen in our society through political advertisement, speeches, and the way in which politicians present themselves. Hitler himself wrote that the reason he used red in Nazi flag is because of the appeal it would have to the working class, an idea he got after attending a Marxist demonstration. Class collaboration is one of the main tenets of fascist ideology. Fascists want people of different classes to work together in order to preserve the social hierarchy. This gives the illusion of a mutually beneficial relationship between the oppressed and the oppressor. And this is why it is necessary for Fiona to appear relatable to Shrek.
We can see now at this point in the movie, Donkey the Revolutionary is being left behind and forgotten about by Shrek. The stopping of the wedding between Lord Farquaad and Princess Fiona represents an attempt at revolution. However, due to the divisions amongst the working class and the lack of a clear goal, this ultimately fails. Donkey, after falling in love with the dragon, enlists her help in stopping the wedding. The dragon is also a revolutionary because she, like Donkey, believes that violence is necessary in defeating the bourgeoisie. So she swallows Lord Farquaad. What prevents this revolution from being successful, however, is Shrek's aversion to violence and susceptibility to liberal reforms. In a pivotal scene, Princess Fiona transforms into an ogre, revealing her curse to Shrek for the first time. This is Fiona's ultimate facade, and Shrek falls for it completely. This represents the proletariat falling for the illusion of happiness created by the bourgeoisie, and this is what prevents the revolution from being successful. We can see at the end of the movie what this illusion of happiness appears to be through the perspective of the disillusioned working class. Everyone is cheerfully celebrating the marriage of Shrek to Fiona, even though she is part of the class that has tortured them, displaced them, and exploited their labor throughout the entire film. She was even agreeing to marry their fascist leader. Under the influence of ideology and the social organization of forgetting, the working class ends up celebrating the politicians that would sooner side with fascists than the working class. And thus, the status quo is maintained, the social order is preserved, and inequality is accepted as necessary and just.
Wow.
Think about it.
Just wonderful. Maybe a little bit of a stretch for that one, but I do respect the effort on making that fit.
I wasted.
All right, what do we got here? Oh, this is more meta stuff. This is for me. I think we'll get to that. All right, if this isn't useful in like the first bit, I'm gonna cut it and we just go to the next thing.
I wasted 10 years of my life waiting to be ready, waiting to have enough experience, waiting for the perfect moment to start creating my own thing. But you know who wasn't waiting? The people creating AI, which is why in the next few minutes, I'll show you not only why waiting to start creating could cost you more than you think, but also why this is the best time in history just to start. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Chet, and I've spent the last decade...
If it actually became part of the Vanguard, she supports the working class.
For a billion-dollar organization.
Yeah, I'm curious if there's a follow-up to that video that explains the, you know, Shrek 2 and Shrek 3. Was there a Shrek 3? I think there was a Shrek 3.
Despite all of that work and all of that experience, I still never felt ready to just start creating for myself. That is until just 2 years ago when I turned 33. Now, 2 years later at 35, I've since attracted an audience of over 125,000 around my art and stories.
Nice.
I built a business on top of that by sharing my creative experience and helping others do the same. Which brings us to today's video, because so many people I've spoken to these past 2 years, maybe just like you, are stuck in that same waiting pattern that I was in. Waiting to start your novel, waiting to share your art, waiting to launch that project or business. And now
I guess we're kind of a little past that point, but
has evolved into paralysis for many of them, wondering if their skills will still matter, if there's even a point in starting now. But the reality is, AI means
that what all these types of videos, yeah.
Some stay frozen, questioning if
I wish we could like.
Will still exist tomorrow.
What does Ask do?
Building something of their own today are already laying the foundation for their creative futures. They're not waiting
Can we do
for
this?
Clarity about what's ahead. They're just starting, and the longer that you wait to join them.
All right, here we go. Emphasizes the the importance of starting your creative journey now. The cost of waiting is exponential. Like this is almost a platitude. Embrace creating in public and becoming a creator. Mastery is adaptation, not tool proficiency. Experience is non-linear, not linear anymore. Okay, leverage your art through content. Perfect moment doesn't exist, but starting is easier than ever. Okay, so we're probably not gaining too much.
With your name on it, just by thinking about
all right.
Meet Base 44.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be tough to find something really
Lately,
telling.
I've been thinking a lot about the contradiction.
Okay, this might be. Oh, this is 55 minutes. All right, we're going to have to. Maybe we should ask what's the summary here.
Lately, I've been thinking a lot about the contradiction of utilizing YouTube as a platform to make videos using philosophy and critical theory to examine cultural and political systems. Because no matter how earnest my intent, I'm still producing.
So we're not. That's not our goal. But
producing work on a platform owned by Google that's structured wholly around capturing attention and selling advertising. And this contradiction goes way beyond the very useful brand of comment that says something like, "You're going to make a video critiquing capitalism that you post on a capitalist website."
Philosophy YouTube is broken 55-minute video. True.
It creates a situation where I'm having to balance my creative and intellectual goals with things
the
like
inherent contradiction of using YouTube as a platform for philosophical and critical theory content. He explores how the platform's focus on attention and advertising clashes with the goals of philosophical inquiry. What are the goals of philosophical inquiry? I didn't know. The goals of philosophical inquiry that we actually mention in our document is simply making sense of the world. So I'm curious what's going to go on here. The philosophy YouTube landscape categorizes philosophy YouTubers into professors, star students, artists, skeptics. Where are we? Where are we? Which one are we? We could be the artist, creators using creative filmmaking. Nope, that's not us. We're pretty scuffed over here. We're not star students. But maybe, you know what? No, maybe it's just autodidacts. So yeah, maybe we are the student. We are the star student. Skeptics, often English individuals who using philosophy to critique topics like religion. All right, problematic philosophy content. Identifies other types of creators who use philosophy in ways that might deviate from its core aims. Self-help. This is us. Those who use ancient philosophy, particularly Stoicism, to create content straddling self-help. Though I don't think he is actually talking about us in this. Debate lords. We're not going to be debate lords, but smart guy beta bros. People who use philosophy to posture as intellectually superior. What is philosophy? Explains philosophy through common philosophical slogans. All right, I think we gotta throw this one away too. Man, where are the gamers? Did he mention gamers? Is gamer in here? Nah. All right, I think we gotta cut this one too. On to the next one. The gist of Western philosophy. I see. I'm probably not going to be actually too interested in this one. I might want to cut this one. I don't think we need to do this. All right, we're down to nothing now. What is we got philosophy is useless.
So Camus said that the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. And isn't philosophy kind of useless, though? I'm sorry? I just think it's a waste of time. Pontificating about the world, just what's the point? Why do you think it's a waste of time? Because you can't do anything with it. Unlike other subjects like maths or science or engineering. So you think that something's only valuable if it's useful? Well, yeah, that's an interesting philosophy. Thank you. Wait, no. I don't have a... So you're a pragmatist. I respect that. No, look, that doesn't count. What do you mean? What I'm trying to say is, you can have a philosophy, that's fine. But talking about philosophy, studying philosophy, that's a waste of time. Right, so you think that philosophy is best acted out. Exactly. Actions speak louder than words. Yes, thank you. Hypothetically, if someone were to be acting incorrectly, do you think it would be worth talking to them about it? I mean, yeah, I guess. Like if someone were doing something useless, do you think it would be worth telling them? Yeah, like I told you that philosophy is useless. Right, because you know that talking about the world and thinking about it is a useful thing to do. Right. Wait, so Camus...
Nice. I thought that was actually pretty well done. You know what? Out of the entire night, that one short, that was it. Hit the spot. There's nothing wrong with philosophy inherently. It's when it's combined with slop that it's bad. I mean, yeah, it always comes down to what's the implications. Like, what are people implying with the philosophy? Like, what are they using it to as a reason for? And is that appropriate or not? Especially, you know, if they're not even like honoring the philosophy or making the I don't know, I want to say something like the intended implications, but you know, I guess it almost doesn't matter what a philosopher intends to imply with their philosophy, because it can take a different life of its own when inferred. Okay, what to do? What is the best way? How can we effectively learn the space of science, philosophy, self-help? How can I effectively learn the space of philosophy? I should say do science/philosophy self-help. Like, where are the communities? Who are the prominent and upcoming creators? What other questions do you think is important to ask? What other questions are? I'm about to link a video, but it has Maria Callas or something in the background. I mean, I could just check out some of these videos off stream if it's got straight up music in it. Like, where are the communities? Who are the prominent creators? I'll just do etc. If I want to enter that space and collaborate, and perhaps collaborate, how / where do I learn the conventions / standards, if there are any? Oh, we got a possible ban evader. I got a vid. Darmanom's got a vid. Let it rip. And then maybe in like 20 minutes, we'll switch to Silk Song and I'll finally finish that game. Permit me. You're right. Though I think you're actually allowed to do a YouTube video. I think it's just non normal links that you're not allowed to throw up. All right, here we go. Top 5 reasons why everyone should meditate. Number 1.
Hi. Now I'll give the number 1 reason why everyone should practice meditation. So the number 1 reason why everyone should practice meditation, not just monks, not just Buddhists, not just people who live off in the forest, but why everyone should practice meditation. Because meditation makes you free. Now, really everything I've been talking about up to now should have sort of given this away already. But if it's not clear already, this is the number 1 reason why we practice meditation. And this is what we call nirvana. If you've ever heard of this word nirvana but never really understand what it meant, it simply means freedom. Freedom not to suffer. Freedom not to have to go through unpleasant situations. Freedom from defilement. Freedom from mental impurity. Freedom from addiction. Freedom from hatred. Freedom from bigotry. Freedom from wrong views. Freedom from conceit. Freedom from...
So I think the practical or useful thing to bring up right now, and it's going to be a prominent theme in part 2, is that there's this dichotomy between our deliberate intentions and, we could say, like our automatic processes or just the other aspects of our predisposition that, guide our habitual experience and behavior. So all these things that he's mentioning that we can gain freedom from are these automatic things, whether it's an automatic drive for hatred, these emotions that come up out of nowhere, whether it's addiction, which is, some ingrained built thing in your brain, procedure in your brain, whatever, however we want to think about it. That's guiding your automatic behavior. What else do we have? Unpleasant situations. So a lot of this is freedom to not get as affected by negative emotion or negative emotional states, discomfort. Obviously, suffering is in there. So, yeah, when we think about freedom, we can think about. I mean, actually, in part 1, we don't think about freedom in this way, just because this is actually a little more concrete. This isn't as fundamental as how we talk about freedom in part 1. But now that we're into part 2, with the topic comes up, how can we more effectively pursue our goals? And all of these things that are mentioned here, we can think about as obstacles in the way of what we actually deliberately want to do. Like, you don't want to have, maybe you might not want to experience automatic hatred or bigotry, any of these descriptors. So it's kind of a meta goal that allows you to more effectively pursue any of your concrete goals. This guy is a bit of a fundamentalist, but legit. Finally, a video that gets straight to the point, right? Though I would say it's not straight to the point, because I think the more straight to the point way of going about this discussion would be to also talk about the science of what meditation does to your brain such that you can get these outcomes. This is still at a level of abstraction that's a little more it's intuitive, but it's not actually giving the rigor of empirical reasoning why you would have the outcome that he's saying that you have. So that would be like what we're that's what we're really looking for. But this is still pretty good, I think you can broaden it, but reactivity to conditioning, right? Yeah, reactivity to, and really though, what you're doing is you're actually conditioning yourself to not be conditioned to these other things. So it's not that you just have this ability now to counteract any other automatic thing. It's that you're actually trying to lower the effectiveness of these other influences from your brain by conditioning something that's even more powerful. And that would be like the more apt way. Because when you're meditating, you are changing your brain. It's not like you're building a skill that's like nowhere. Like the skill is in how your brain now responds to information, stimuli, mental states, etc. Yeah, because you could be hateful in a very premeditating way, even without realizing it. Premeditated way. Right. So, once you're in a position, like, you have to gain familiarity. You have to build a relationship between yourself and the actual feeling of hatred coming up. So that's not something that you can just do on day one effectively. You have to build, it's a practice. You have to build the connections in your brain that allow you to very effectively notice when that emotion is arising, and then to attempt not to act in its in the face of it, so, or in spite of it.
Unpleasant, unwholesome, unskillful and useless states of mind. Total freedom.
Now, to be fair though, sometimes automatic states of mind are not necessarily useless, and it's not like you want to, it's not like people usually want to meditate away from, some of the positive emotional states that we get in that, we might describe as irrational or childlike or animal-like. He's talking about greed, hatred, ignorance there, based on surrounding words. Yep. The unwholesome.
Total freedom. And it's
Right.
not freedom to do anything.
Yeah, he's probably referring to, obviously specific things, but because it's ambiguous, I just need to say these things. Even if that's not his intention.
In fact, it can really severely limit the things that you decide to do, because a lot of the things we decide to do are actually based on suffering and leading to suffering. It's not freedom to, it's freedom from. Real and true freedom is like flying like a bird, where you don't cling to anything, where wherever you go, you take just your two wings with you. A bird is an animal which is able to fly free and not have to cling to anything. So wherever we go, in whatever situation that we are, we're not attached to anything. We aren't attached to people, we aren't attached to places, we aren't attached to things. We're able to live our lives in whatever situation and not be caught up with should be.
I might even change that a little, where it's not that we just become free. Yeah, it's not that we just become free from all attachment. It's that we are in a position to choose which things we want to be attached to. So certainly you don't want to lose attachment from even your understanding of yourself being a person alive and able to move around and stuff like that, but you can now be attached to this idea of I don't know, some type of beneficial autonomy. Obviously, when you go through something like this and you become incredibly skilled at meditating, you are attaching this understanding of what you're doing while you're doing it, and that's fine, because you don't mind that you're attaching this understanding that I am meditating towards the lack of suffering. Like, that description, that reality that you've now created for yourself is one that you're fine with. So that is something you're attached to. But yeah, it's, that it's going to lead you in a right direction. Greed and hatred, shade into attraction and aversion. Similar concepts are sort of merged in Buddhism. I think it's easy to conflate attachment with things like liking, love, etc., but really different things, in my opinion. But I'm sure with poor practice, it can go badly. Okay, I see. Right. When I think about attachment, I think even more fundamentally like your understanding, like attachment to some concrete fact about the world. So, and that goes easy, or that connects easily in my mind with a more fundamental understanding of expectation as this, we can port it right onto predictive processing, which is very fundamental. So it does benefit us to not be attached to certain descriptions about the world, about our life, because they are pushing us in directions that make us suffer in the way that I imagine he's referring to. But there are attachments that we do want to point ourselves towards that do actually result in our positive emotion and a fulfilling life, which is what we're going to get to. It's like, how can we think about our life such that we do feel positive emotion and fulfillment and meaning, etc.? That's going to be what we look at in part 3, obviously. Can be thought of as not grasping at things, a bit more comprehensible. Yep, fair enough.
Be, should not be, wish it were, wish it weren't, or any kind of judgment whatsoever. We live like a bird, and wherever we go, we eat the fruit from the tree wherever we land. The practice of meditation is something which allows us to live our lives like a bird, free like a bird. It's something which allows us to stop grasping and stop clinging, and that really everywhere and anywhere,
very nice,
we can be truly happy and at peace with ourselves, at peace with the world around us. So this one, I think you really have to see for yourself. It's not something that you can just take my word for. So the practice of meditation is something that you have to practice by yourself. These videos are not just for your entertainment and pleasure. They're something that you should really put into practice. And since the meditation is something that allows us to be free, I think it's something that I would encourage everyone to please take the time to at least try. If you try it and you find that it doesn't work for you, then fine. Or please do contact me, and I'll try to convince you otherwise, or explain to you why it might be that you're not able to get results in the practice. Take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, and you yourselves can understand the benefits of meditation. Thanks for tuning in, and I sincerely hope that this leads everyone watching it, or at least a significant number of people, to peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering.
Very cool. It's certainly a good message. And a beneficial one, or at least a one that leads, at least I think, towards positive outcomes, which we will cover. All right. I'll try and find some sciencey stuff for me. Nice. We might, I don't know if we have time tonight, but we can, I'll throw it into the list for next Friday. Navigating the intersection of science, philosophy, and self-help, a guide to the landscape for those seeking self-improvement grounded in empirical evidence and timeless wisdom. The burgeoning science of science and philosophy, self-help offers a compelling alternative to more conventional advice. This niche thrives on principles that a better life can be built upon a foundation of scientific understanding and philosophical insight. For individuals looking to immerse themselves in this world and perhaps even contribute, understanding its communities, key figures, okay, blah, blah, blah. Where the conversations happen, key communities. Okay, websites like Reddit host several relevant rational self-help. What is going on in there? Is this not a subreddit? All right, I think it's just making things up. I feel like Gemini does seem to make more things up than ChatGPT. Maybe we should have ChatGPT do the research mode on this. These forums, blah, 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 blogs. Yeah, but we need to find where these are. I want to know where to go. Platforms like X. I don't think we should be doing anything on X. It's just not the right format. The voices shaping the conversation. Authors like James Clear. Okay, this is a little outdated. Grit, the power, passion, and perseverance. Yeah, but like books aren't as dynamic as I'm looking for. Andrew Huberman. And I'm guessing that each of these people have Discord servers that are somewhat alive, but they're not as... Maybe, you know what? Maybe we should check out these. I mean, that's kind of what we're going to be doing, right? We're going to be building our own Discord server. So I don't know if that's, I don't know if there's anything there, but yo, embrace primalism. It's the linchpin. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a little behind here. I just looked up meditation science on YouTube, and it's partly a horrific. Did you crack open the new Renaissance? Sorry, my typing is bad today. It's the linchpin to reality, our lives, the world, the time stream. Oh, God. I don't know what you're referring to, but I'm interested. Or are you referring to what we do on this channel, as in the Renaissance? And I guess to answer your question, we did finish part 1. I think we had finished when I was reading it when you were around. And I'm now starting to make videos, so we should have a couple videos coming this week. One of me doing the reading the collective knowledge major section of part 1, and then one of us talking about quantum physics and consciousness, which is what I went over on Tuesday. And then I do need to start looking through our VODs to see, and when I say looking through, I mean throwing the transcript into Gemini and then asking if there's any content that it recommends I make videos or short form content from, and then grabbing that. So, great progress. Thank you. Yeah, we're just kind of building a base of content on the YouTube channel right now. Cars have windows. What is going on here? This is 20 seconds long.
Cars have windows and can move.
And can move.
Houses have windows and can't move. So it's not the windows that make the car go. It's something else entirely. This is what ancient Greek philosophy is like.
Very nice. The new Renaissance, a powerful content farm. We should actually be able to make a ton of content just based on random stuff I think about, and the stuff obviously from part 1. Yeah, so we have to find the content creators that most not align necessarily in content exactly, but align in the type of content that we're trying to strive for. Like, people can do it a different way, but we're looking for people who are trying to do something similar. Authors, independent bloggers, the unwritten rules, conventions, rigorous research and accurate representation, actionable and accessible advice, intellectual honesty and nuance, personal connection and relatability, blah, 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 ethical considerations. Yeah. All right, there's nothing really that crazy there. We're gonna stand on the Times Square billboards. Very nice. I don't know if that's really the most effective marketing we could do, but Seaman is all over is capitalizing on the jam. I don't know what that is. Eamon Hillman. Compliments Lady Babylon completely. Okay. It's a YouTube channel. Aha. I decided to use my unusual sounding last name to name this channel. Very nice. The content of this channel will include whatever captures my attention and is interesting to me. Oh, is capitalizing on this channel. Okay, now I understand what you're saying. All right. The sophistry of Gnostic informant and myth vision. Nice. Rectal application and medications in antiquity. How an illiterate me/you can take down a blowhard philologist. All right. The Law of the Way. Might be interested. This is it. Yeah, the content is quite scattered there. All right, I think we might switch over, and I might kill a final boss of a certain game that, you know, not that special. You know, I haven't enjoyed that much, but we'll finally finish it off. All right, so I'll probably start back up in like a few minutes. I don't even think I'm gonna move. So 3 minutes, I'll be back, and I'll start up Silk Song.